You ready? Let's do this. Welcome to the podcast, or welcome back to the podcast. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. This is the GROklahoma podcast, where we, talk about innovation and creativity in the Sooner State. And today we have one of the very first set of people on the podcast. So I should all let you know that when we started this podcast, we wanted to have just very diverse voices of not just PIs, but those who support them. And we know that we don't work in isolation. There are people behind the scenes who we don't necessarily know their names, but they are doing great stuff. And today we have, such person with us. And I want to just thank her for heeding the call, because this, I hope, will open the doors for more support personnel to come on the podcast as well. She is the Senior Associate Director for the OUHSC Office of Interdisciplinary Programs, and she brings her rich expertise in fostering interdisciplinary learning experiences and facilitating faculty development. With a keen focus on students' engagement for community partnerships, she works tirelessly to break down barriers to healthcare access for Oklahoma's medically underserved populations. She holds a Master's of Education in Adult Education. She's a beacon for diversity and collaboration and a staunch advocate for the scholarship of teaching and learning. Today, let's talk to Miss Margaret Robinson. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I don't know if you've listened to any of our episodes, but one of the first questions I like to ask is, tell us a little bit about your background and just whatever, maybe what happened when you were younger that will have predicted your current role today.
Yeah. And that's such a heavy question, right? Is this therapy? So I won't get into too much. But I'm a traditional, non-traditional student, right? I grew up out in LA, originally from Los Angeles, and grew up very poor. Family was on welfare, very disenfranchised, I would say. And I worked really hard. I always tried to work very hard in school, and I had a English teacher that eventually saw something in me and said, I want to make sure you go to college. And so she paid for me to take the SAT exam so that I could go to college. And my selected major was architecture. I was really good at math, loved to draw, and I had this passion that I could change the world and how we build sustainable housing for those that are either going through disasters or refugee status around the world, and make it culturally appropriate. So not just 3D printing and such, but to make it where it's someplace you'd want to live, not just a tarp over your head, right? And so that was my passion. It was my calling. And I got into college, and my fourth day there, my dad had a pulmonary embolism, and they did not think he was going to live. And so I had to drop out of school and move back home to take care of him because we couldn't afford a home health nurse, right? And so I worked really hard, went to community college. I did an associate's degree in a year, so I was proud of myself for that. And I reapplied to an architecture program closer to home. Right. Wow. And so I got into an impacted program, and I went to meet with my academic advisor, and she hands me my schedule of classes, and it's all daytime classes, and I hand it back. I said, I'm sorry, I need the evening classes. And she said, well, we don't offer that. And she explained how architecture worked. It's very similar to our health sciences, pharmacy, medicine, et cetera. It's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And she explains that to me. I said, well, I have to take care of my dad. I can't come during the day, so what do I do? And she said, well, you either change your availability or you change your major. So I changed my major and changed it to history, and then life happened, right? I met a boy. He moved to Oklahoma. I moved to Oklahoma. I stayed in Oklahoma. I started working out there in LA. Started working at Harbor UCLA Medical Center just to get a job. Well, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, and then got the job here at OU when I moved here to Oklahoma. And so I was in this limbo for a long time, right? Just out living life and everything. And here at OU, I had a really great opportunity to start working with students. And it's like, sometimes the universe knows better than you do. And so really fell in love with what I was doing here. And so I eventually, 13 years later, went back and finished my degree. 13 years. And so at that time, since I knew I loved working with students, I went back for a master's in adult education. And now I'm doing the OU online program in community engagement. And so it's a long path to get to where I am. It's not necessarily your traditional college experience, but now I have a new passion of what we do. And I think I have a better calling of where I can impact what we're doing as a planet to hopefully improve where we're going to leave things for our children after we're gone.
Wow. What a story. I'm curious to know, did your dad make it?
Yeah. He passed away a couple of years later, but that was a difficult situation because they did not expect him to survive. And so what do? You drop out of school and you go home.
Wow. And I mean, also kudos to the teacher who paid for your exams. I mean, they saw something in you, and thinking of what that seed was and how that kickstarted what you're doing right now. And I imagine it's really impacted your life in so many different ways.
100%.
Yeah. And I can definitely see why you're so passionate about students and the inclusivity as well.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So you are the Senior Associate Director of the Office of Interdisciplinary Programs. I'm actually stumbling on that word.
Try to spell it.
I know, right? Can you walk us through a day in your life? Like, how would you break it down into the digestible format?
Right. And I mean, it is kind of a joke about interdisciplinary. Not many people know what that means, or, we always say no one knows how to spell it. So interdisciplinary is the term we've chosen here at the Health Sciences Center to reflect on interprofessional. Interprofessional is the more common national term that's used. And it's based off a World Health Organization framework for action that said interprofessional refers to two or more professions coming together to improve health outcomes. That if we can work better together as a team, then the intention or the hypothesis is that we can improve the health outcomes if we all work better together. And so that is our charge. It is an accreditation-based charge. We are not the only ones doing this across the country. All health professions have this as a requirement. So our office is the central location here on campus to not only develop that programming, but to operationalize that programming. So day-to-day here means that we are looking at curriculum, we are looking at faculty development, we're looking at the evaluation and assessment of what we're doing, continuous quality improvement, and making sure that we are building those partnerships to be sustainable and that our programming is replicable. And so that means a lot of meetings. For those looking for a career, it's a whole lot of meetings, but the meetings are the work, right? It's that collaborative process of getting together, putting all the minds on a project, on a problem, finding solutions, and then making sure it's still working. We do budget work because someone has to pay for all of this. There's grants and such that go along with it. We do community engagement because so much of what the World Health is trying to do is to tear down those barriers, right? What is access to care? Where do social determinants of health intersect with our educational programming and our health outcomes? Are we making sure that our students are engaged in finding this to be meaningful and finding a sense of belonging in what they're doing? Are we building networks with our practitioners and others out in the field, our community members? And so it is a lot of meetings on all those different components to ensure that the program, that term that we use, sustainable and replicable. And so I love my job. I say I have the best job on campus, even when it means I'm lifting boxes and loading our outreach bus. It gives me the opportunity to work with thousands of students from across campus and all the different disciplines. I get to work with hundreds of faculty and staff and dozens of community partners. And so it's an amazing opportunity to work with all those change agents that are out there every day wanting to help others. And I get to be in this central location, getting to help them to help others. So it's a really neat position.
Oh, wow. Thank you. And I know you do a lot of work with the interprofessional educators and practitioners association. Yeah, IEPA for sure.
You got it.
Yeah. Do you also work with the APD? Do you do some work with?
Yeah, that goes through our office.
Yeah. Can you just talk about those two?
Sure. Yeah. So the curriculum committee thought it would be important that we have a menu of offerings, right? Because we have the 27 different programs on campus that participate. There's not a one size fits all. For all of our students on campus. The pharmacy may have one requirement, dentistry has a different requirement. So how do we offer something that's central that applies to all of them? Right, that all schools nationwide are trying to figure this out. And so our curriculum team said, well, we want a menu where not everyone does something, but not everyone does everything, but everyone does something, right? So we have this menu, and at the basis, they want a didactic component, an awareness component, where students are getting introduced to the concepts of interprofessional education. And so we refer to that here at OU as All Professions Day, where we're bringing all those professions and introducing them to those basic concepts. We used to do this in person where we'd have hundreds of people in a room, right? It was a big day where everyone came on campus to get to see everyone. And then COVID hit, and it really put that kink in. Well, it's not safe to put hundreds of people in the same room together. It changed how we were able to approach this introductory content that we now offer as a Zoom-based offering to all first-year learners in all programs. So we went from offering it to about 800 students to now about 1,400 students. Wow. Yes, because now we have Tulsa, we have Lawton, we have the online programs that they're all able to have this introductory experience. And so what All Professions Day is, it's a 2-part series where we bring them in and introduce our students to the national IPEC competencies. IPEC is another one of those acronyms, right? We love our acronyms.
And the meetings too.
The Interprofessional Education Collaborative, IPEC. They are a conglomerate of all the accreditation bodies that said, here's what we agree we find important to teach in interprofessional collaboration. And again, it's a national body. These are national competencies. And they've set 4 competencies that we're going to all address nationwide. Communication, roles and responsibility, values and ethics, and teamwork. These are simple concepts, right? Very simple terms, but it's giving the time to be intentional about that and saying, where do we hold each other accountable to be intentional to that? And what does that mean in practice in different team situations? So All Professions Day is where we bring in, introduce those IPEC competencies and give a short amount of time to start interacting with those. It really is meant to just be that first step, that first toe in the water before students go on to things like our interprofessional simulations or the clinical experience.
Oh, wow. First of all, kudos on just the growth it's experienced in the past few years. And I imagine that it's not been quite easy, especially coming up with the cases where, because I've served as preceptors and I'm actually doing one on Friday, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Speaking of which, if you get the call, please sign up to Precept. They need a lot of help. Okay. And it's always fun because you get all these multidisciplinary perspectives, from dentistry, from pharmacy, from public health, from allied health. Yeah. Right. And having to come up with innovative case scenarios where people can feel like, oh, I can contribute to that, be it social work or pharmacy or medicine or dentistry, So yeah, thank you for just, explaining everything in a very clear way. Now, your role also involves leading student engagement initiatives for community partnerships. What's that like? And are you able to share some highlights of these initiatives and how they help in improving access for underserved people in Oklahoma?
Oh, definitely. Unity Clinic becomes a great example that comes to mind on that. So going back to student engagement, very quickly as we're looking at how to expand IPE, just like any engagement initiative, you need the user to be included with the development, right? You can't do things to people without them, nothing for us without us, right? And that comes just with curriculum development just as well as anything else. And so the student voice became very important to say, how are we developing our programming? How are we delivering it? And is it meaningful? And so students actually designed our clinical component. They took what was previously a faculty-led clinical experience and came up with a team that networked across campus, made sure we had inclusion from every possible cohort of voice that you could think of, whether it be professional, personal backgrounds, different parts of the world. I mean, everything you could think of. We had 80 different students involved in this group to come together and say, what would be meaningful for us as a clinical experience to deliver care? Some of the tenets that were important to them were, one, inclusion, that everyone has a seat at the table, right? That it's not just a medical-led clinic, that pharmacy, nursing, social work, etc., all have a role at this clinic, right? And so they're very intentional about that. They also wanted to make sure that it's focusing on gaps in healthcare. And as we know, we have some historical gaps in what we do, and that's often due to access, right? There's barriers to care. And so Unity Clinic set as one of their core principles to address healthcare access for underrepresented populations.
Wow.
And so that was very pivotal to everything we've done since then. The original team proposed, it was a one-page proposal saying, we would like to do a mobile clinic where we can take our healthcare teams out into the community, meet patients where they are, and provide healthcare to them, whether that be oral care, whether that be they have a skin infection. Mobile pharmacy, where if we diagnose something, we can dispense the meds for that right there on site. And so they were very altruistic that we can take our teams and fix healthcare by getting care to people. And the original group also wanted to do people where they are. And of course, the logistics around that took a lot to get to, and we're still working to make sure we can deliver that fully to the students' intention. But along the way, we built a system of leadership where students are consistently engaged every single year. Students set the strategic plan for Unity Clinic. So for the next 5 years, students are in charge of setting what those goals, the tactics, the metrics that we're basing our success off are all set by those students. And then the actual operation, we have student leads with faculty supervision, of course, that are going out and delivering these interventions with the patients in the community. And so that student engagement piece means that you're not just making something that they're happy with, but that you are purposefully engaging them in every component of the project as a partner, not just the recipient of the education, but a partner in the education. And so the end effect is hopefully that those students are going to be more invested in their Unity Clinic experience, that they are going to find it worthwhile. A lot of the grant funding says, well, hopefully they will return to treat underrepresented populations as well in their future clinical practice, and that hopefully we're building trust with those communities so that they can see us as that healthcare partner.
Wow. I love just how this is so student-centric from the beginning of it to even the execution and the evaluation of it. That's so brilliant. And then working together with the community and the preceptors as well. Wow. Thank you so much. So we know that interdisciplinary teams even though they can be quite effective, it's not a walk in the park building them, right? How would you say, from your experience, what are the biggest challenges in managing these teams, and how have you been able to overcome them to ensure harmonious and productive collaboration?
So I have two approaches that I often think of this. One is
Tell us.
One is like the, happy rainbows and butterflies approach of, how do you keep the team happy? And, my role of cheerleader and all that. And then the other side is, or the other shoulder, if you say, the other shoulder then is the very realistic, getting down to basics. So I'll start with that happy sunshine and butterfly approach and saying that teams inherently, you're bringing people that each have their own brain, their own life experience, their own education. What Kate Salmons talks about, that invisible backpack that you bring that has all of your life experience, right? And you're just hoping, right, that people magically get along, right? And so as we look at those team scenarios where you're magically hoping people get along, well, you have to focus on what's the lowest common denominator, right? And that is what is the goal or the outcome, and you keep everything goal-centric. Right. And so that's a very basic HR approach to any kind of teaming, is that you maintain goal centricity and keep everyone on mission to what the ultimate goal is. But then you have to rely on people to self-select or be intrinsically motivated by that goal. Right. And so that's, again, that magic starshine and everything that goes into it. And so on the other shoulder, like the other hand, is the very real approach that in 2024, every single one of us is burnt out.
I know. This is post-COVID.
Right? It's not unique. It's our kids in school. It's our students in higher ed. It's our faculty. It's our clinicians. It's our patients. It's, we are all burnt out. And so how do you deal with a team where everyone's already giving 110% and you're asking them to give you more, to do it as a team, not just their own, but now as a team? That's a challenge, right? And so I think nationally, as we look at, like, there's the triple aim from IHI, there's quadruple aim, and now this quintuple aim that says we can improve health outcomes by including the wellness of the team member. Right? So how do you look at wellness? And I think that comes down to systems, right? That you have to look at your team members as people first. That until you can approach that you're not operating a team of robots, right? That you are operating people that are people first, employee second, people first, team member second, people first, clinician second, right? But people first. Yeah. And what are you doing as a system, as a leader, as a team leader, to ensure that people have that space to be people first? And before you set a goal, is the goal appropriate to people first, right? And it's that reframing of what are we doing as people first. And so Dr. Valerie Williams, our vice provost here on campus, she a couple of years ago did a faculty development project looking at the 5 languages of workplace appreciation. And it's very similar to the 5 love languages, right? Like, do you like to get gifts, or do you want words of affirmation? Right, exactly. But that translates into the workplace, and looking at your team members as having both intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. For wanting to be part of the team and wanting to do well, and to stop and to acknowledge that, and to give space for that. Again, that people first approach, right? Yeah. The goal or the outcome is not enough for most people. They need to have those intrinsic and extrinsic motivators that are unique to each person to address that. And I used to have this boss over when I was with college and nursing, and he would always have Phil Jackson stuff on his desk, right? Like all the books that Phil Jackson was the coach for the Bulls and the Lakers when they won a bunch of championships. And so Heath would always have all these books from Phil Jackson. And so finally I asked him, I was like, why do you have basketball books when we're doing like student services? And he said, because the approach that Phil used that was successful in his management of teams was to build each team member, whether it be Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, whoever it was, he would build each team member to be the highest performing individual team member that they could possibly be. That he would put individualized effort into every single team member, because if you start with people first, the success will follow. I think that's just poignant, that as we're looking at these challenges and barriers to our teams, that we really think of how are we looking at people first.
I mean, that's a very good suggestion, but I imagine it's not quite easy to do.
No.
Yes, because we're so process oriented. We forget that it's the people first.
Yes.
And I loved your talk on the extrinsic and the intrinsic source of motivations, and also what's the lowest common denominator. And then when you keep people like buying, you all know what the company vision is or the goal or mission, whatever. But let them feel like they can also contribute towards it. Use them well. Use their and then give them that validation of how they are contributing to the larger goal. I think that's where most of us miss the mark, right?
Right. And it's easy to do because we do have outcomes.
Sure.
We all have a deliverable for our position. We all have end goals at the end of the year. If we're grant funded, we have deliverables to external bodies that we have to report on. And so it's easy to see that as our guidance, right? To forget that it's people doing it first, and that we can all work towards that and still have a good outcome, but don't forget that it's the people first.
Yeah. Sure. Whew, thank you. So you've been at OU for some time now.
Yeah.
How would you say, how many years has it been again?
21.
Okay. How would you say your journey has been, and how are we keeping you engaged and passionate about your work? We love you here, by the way. So.
Thank you. I do plan to stay a while. Yeah. I started here as a temp. Like, not everybody knows that. Like, I started as the lowest of the low on campus, answering phones as a temp employee. I started on September 10th, 2001. And I will always remember that because my second day answering the phones was 9/11. So I will always remember September 10th, 2001. And I was here for a couple of months as a temp. And then that temp position ended. And I went away for a year. And they called me back up. And they said, would you like to come back home? I said yes. And so I came back and had a full-time position as a staff secretary. Again, answering the phones, worked my way up to administrative secretary, which means answering more phones. And then I got hired into student affairs at the College of Nursing. And I was there for 14 years with student affairs. And I wore every possible hat you can imagine when I was with student affairs. Everything from recruitment to admissions coordinator. I was graduation coordinator, did progression, even some alumni affairs, all of that. And it was during that experience that like everything kind of came full circle for me, right? Because I had that experience back when I wanted to be an architect, and I had that advisor that realistically didn't help me pursue my passion, right? And then I became an academic advisor in nursing, where my whole job was to help nursing students follow their calling to become a nurse. And I feel like I was great at that because of my personal experience. And I loved that job, and I think I was pretty darn good at it. So working with thousands of students to pursue their passion. And that becomes motivator, right? When you understand that you get to help others, that it's a privilege, that you get to stop what you're doing and put your mind around whatever their challenge is, whatever their barrier is, and that you get to help them. They are then going to go out to be the researcher, to be the clinician, to be the community worker that is going to then exponentially help other patients, other client members, other community members. And it's like that butterfly effect, right? That we get here in student services, where our touch points with different students ripple throughout the community. So I've worked with thousands of students that treat even more thousands, tens of thousands of patients that have hundreds of thousands of family members, right? All because I put in the extra effort to help them get where they want to be. That's amazing.
And I think if I was going to ask you this question, but I think I have the answer already, but I'm still going to respond and then still ask you the question. What a horrible host I am. I want to think that your passion for just what you do stems from your one of the biggest motivators will be your personal experience, given, challenges you had getting to college, which might not be quite obvious because, privilege comes in so many ways, but you had your own unique story, right? And then, having to serve as a caregiver for your dad and knowing that, you had to, shift your major from architecture to what you ended up doing. But I'm curious to know what motivates you?
Oh, what motivates me on a daily basis? I would say my intrinsic motivation is that I truly believe, and this may be a bit Pollyanna of me, but I truly believe at my heart and soul that we as a humanity can do better. I believe that in the depths of my soul, that there are people that are good in this world, that we want to leave the world better for our children than we received it, and that we are willing to roll up our sleeves and do that hard work. I believe that in my heart and soul. And so if this is the path that I get to do, that good hard work to make the world better, then what an amazing, amazing opportunity the universe has sent me.
And I think you, like most people that do the kind of job you do, you're able to see just how we're interconnected. So you can't take things for granted. How you think is just that ripple effect, but then it can have so many effects in the future. Like you training one student and they go ahead in the community and do greater good. I think it goes back to that teacher, sowing that seed in your life many years ago. Yeah, Miss Peters. Is she still with us, by the way? Shout out to her.
I believe she passed away a couple years ago. That was out in LA.
Anyways, thank you. Now, let's talk about mentoring, right? I'm sure you're also involved in that. Can you just talk about the importance of mentoring in academia and professional development?
Mentoring is one of those areas that we think, it's a formal relationship. And sometimes it can and should be, right? But sometimes it's all about that just personal connection of where you're making your relationships matter. Right? So in academia, we often try to find who has the most expertise in this area or who has the job I want. Right? And I want to go and be under their wing. And that's rightly so. That's very important. And I think our Oklahoma Center for Mentoring Excellence with Dr. Natasha Michael does an amazing job at giving us the tenets of how to build those type of relationships. So very pivotal to professional development that you find someone who's where you want to be and you figure out how they can help you get where you want to be, right? Very, very meaningful. But something that we often talk about in student services is that you have something to learn from everybody. Right? Even the janitors, right? That's not just a meme on Facebook, right? That is truth, that everyone has something to teach you. And so where do you find these single serving mentors? Right? Where do you take advantage of your opportunity to speak up and ask those questions? Where do you introduce yourself to the person you've never met before? Where do you find those commonalities and find the different pieces that help you put your puzzle together, right? And that comes from just being intentional to speak up, not waiting for your mentor to find you, but sometimes going out and finding those that are out in the spaces where you want to be, and finding where you can get a connection to them and learn from them.
I like that. And I think it also speaks to you making that first step to asking, what kind of help do I need? And who can provide that for me?
Right.
And I imagine for those that
Right.
are, maybe starting up in a career, or maybe they've had some bad experiences before with mentoring, they might be quite reticent to doing that. So what are some of...
Oh,
I
yeah.
know,
It's
and
scary,
it
right?
takes a lot of vulnerability. Like, that's a currency right there to say, hey, I need
Yes.
help. This is the level of help I need. What are some strategies for effective networking? Not just, shallow, but like building those networks and also sustaining them, because they're two different things, right?
Right. Right. Oh my gosh. And so I think when we figure this out, Mo, we
Right,
get to
and
write
then
the
make a
book
little
and we
money.
retire as millionaires, right? I think, yeah. So someone take notes, right? When we figure this out. But, and I think that's a challenge in the modern world where we're all hyper connected, but also very, very alone. Right?
Great shit.
Right? I mean, right? And so how do you make those connections meaningful and sustainable? That is a challenge, whether you're talking professional development, personal relationships, or whatnot. That, we have social media and we feel like we know everything that's going on, yet at the same time, no one knows what's going on with us. Right. Like, so how do you have this paradox in the world today? And how do you make that work for you? And that's a challenge. And so something that, we've really worked to teach with our student leaders is intentionality, right? That you can have all the good ideas up the wazoo. You can meet all these great people. You can know provost or vice president so-and-so. But unless you're being intentional to an action item, you're not going to sustain that relationship. And so it means that you have to go in with a purpose. You have to have that purpose-driven relationship to say, okay, we are going to meet once a month, right? We are going to, or have that mentorship contract that we are going to work on XYZ project, or you are going to help me review this paper, or, right? You have to go into some of that with some intentionality of where you're going to want an outcome of that relationship when you're looking at professional mentorship. And then something that Dr. Williams, again, our vice provost, says is, the soft skills really are the hard skills.
Preach it.
Right? Like we say
yes.
Right? And so making the time to say, do you want to grab a cup of coffee? Like,
I know.
When do we do that anymore? Right?
No strings attached, just coffee.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Just to have those basic human conversations with each other.
Sometimes.
Impossible sometimes, like, right? And it's the first thing that comes off your schedule when you get busy. Like, okay, we'll do that next month, right? Exactly. I have friends I haven't seen in like 6 months because it's the first
and they most
thing
likely
that
live in
gets
Oklahoma.
Right? They can work across the hallway, right? But we don't make time for those soft areas anymore. And so sometimes it means putting it on your calendar as a firm commitment that it is just as big of a responsibility as that other deadline you have, of that paper that's due, of that meeting you have to attend, those interactions, those networking opportunities, those mentorship meetings, whatever that is, becomes just as important to your time and your development as a professional as all your other commitments.
How do you think it's going to change because you've alluded to social media use and all that, with this rapid rise in digital age, and, hyper awareness, hyper intelligence, hyper. I think that's going to change. How do you foresee the future of networking and what we're doing changing in the next 10, 20 years?
Right. Well, when I first started going to school, we used typewriters. No one.
I am honest, they still,
typewriter. Right. So you look at like the change. We cannot even fathom where the world will be in 20 years, but it's one of those positions. Well, we either embrace it or we lose to it. Right. And so how do we incorporate it into what we're doing to change how we're doing? So I always think of it, especially like with our scholarly productivity aspect, that it now becomes not the enemy. It is now our tool that we can use. So as you're working on a project, when you're developing a course, when you're working on a research question, you can now use social media to network and find another tool for us. It's true. Find others in these similar spaces. You're not this island unto yourself anymore. You can actually reach out and get help from people on the other side of the planet, even, right? Like in your 15-inch laptop screen, you have access to 8 billion people, right? Like you have the world at your fingertips. Yes. And so why not use that as the tool that it is and put it to your use as another tool for your collaboration? Or even as you're working on the project and you're finding, this worked, that didn't work, getting the feedback from colleagues to have those additional voices to build your project to be even stronger. And then dissemination of findings. Like social media gives you this whole new audience to translate your knowledge into something that's meaningful. So you can take even from the bench and your research that you're doing at the bench and translate it to the general population in ways we've never been able to do before. Like what a tool, what an opportunity for us.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for all of that. So as we round off our session, I'm curious to know what questions do you think we should be asking, and this could be relevant to your line of work that we aren't asking, but you think are very important to ask.
Something that I often start off with in IPE when we're looking at discussions is who else is not at the table?
Inclusivity.
Right. And you can look at that from all different lenses. Like there's all sorts of different ways you can look at that, right? Who isn't at the table? And very often in health, it's often the patient.
Yeah.
Right?
We do it for them, but they're not there.
Yeah, right. And then that ripple effect, they're caregivers, they're family members. So the family network is out here trying to do amazing work to say your caregivers have just as much voice in everything that we're developing in the health sciences, but they're often not at the table, even if the patient is. And so where do we build a bigger table? Where do we start including those additional voices that are traditionally either historically excluded, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're two women talking about it. 100 years ago, there's no way we would have had this conversation. Right. I mean, so where do we start looking for those voices that have purposefully been excluded out of the conversation, or where we haven't even thought yet to include others? And so it will impact what we're doing. Hopefully, I'll get on my soapbox for a moment and say, right, that it can only benefit our outcome. That if we put more eyes on a problem, then that gives you more line of sight to find a solution. And so the more people you bring to the table, the better off your outcomes will be. You don't have to be the hero. You don't have to do it yourself. Bring others along with you, and you're going to be more productive. So that question we need to ask is, who else needs to be invited?
At a table, Well, pulling up a chair for them and inviting them to be a part of that. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. I forgot to ask this question when you were talking about your beginning years. So your original track was supposed to be architecture, then you did a pivot. Did you, or maybe, I imagine you still don't, but I imagine at that point there was maybe a little bit of regret. Did you ever go through that? How did you manage to just tell yourself, this is the path, this is a new way now, we're going to stick to it? And I'm asking that question, especially for those who might be at that crossroad of their life where they're forced to make a pivot. But I believe that things still end up being beautiful in their own time. It might take a while, but the path in front of you is the path you're supposed to be on, right? So, but how did you, get over or walk around that lingering regret of, that was my path and this is a new one, let's just see how it goes?
That's such a good Counselor Mo here. That's a heavy question. It's heavy on me. And I'm going to try not to get emotional, but I think that that's very common, especially in our roles here. We set out, 5-year plan, 10-year plan. We're all about strategy and where are we going to be in such amount of time. We set these time limits for ourselves. And when we don't meet that, or we're not going in the direction we work to go in, you have failed, right? I think it's very natural to take on that personal responsibility of failure. And so I was no different, right? That regret. And if I used to always say, when I win the lottery, I'm going back to school for architecture, right? And this was an unrealistic goal that I had for myself, that I would still get back on track. And so something 20 years later, what I'd go back and tell my younger self is to really pay attention to the journey, not the destination, because you could have different roads come ahead to you. Yeah. That you have your blinders on and you completely miss an amazing opportunity because you're so focused on one goal. And why not enjoy it? You get to decide if you want to be a miserable, regretful person, or if you're going to enjoy what the universe gives you. Yeah. And so if I could go back and tell my younger self anything, it would be to enjoy that journey along the way.
That is so true, because moaning about things is surely the easy way out. It's definitely part of the human experience. But I think the encouragement here is not to, let that fester on, because there's just something pervasive about sitting in your misery for so long. So I hope this is encouraging to anyone listening to that. Yes, maybe life, threw a lot of stuff at you, but how can you make the best out of it? Because it's all going to work out in the end. You have to believe that for yourself more than anybody else. Yeah. So thank you for, and I didn't mean to make you all emotional, but I just thought that was a very key piece of information right there. And I wanted to use that as a way to connect with the audience and hopefully help somebody who might be going through that, joining their own life as well. But thank you for being so vulnerable and, sharing that. Yeah. 2 more questions as a round off. So I started doing I put a little twist on the podcast recently where I have the last guest leave a question for the next guest. So this question was left, and they don't know who the next guest is going to be, and I, don't know as well. So, but I think this is so up your alleyway because you've talked about it. So this question was from Dr. Alexander Adam, and he would like to know, when you're done with your career, what would you want people to say about the impact you have made in the world? So basically asking, what legacy do you want to leave behind in the world?
Oh, that is an amazing question. Dr. Alexander's a wonderful colleague. We love working with him. He's doing amazing work over at Stevenson. And so I guess at the end of the day, I would hope that I have left a legacy where I've helped others achieve their goals. And so hopefully as they speak at my funeral, they'll say, I am where I am today because Margaret believed in me.
Thank you for that. And in the spirit of just recycling forward, what question would you like to leave for the next guest?
Where do you see an opportunity for Oklahoma to better support your work?
I like that. Thank you. It really speaks to your heart as someone who is really passionate about building teams and helping people. I guess that's a very, very altruistic question.
Right?
Yeah.
That bigger picture, right? We're all doing amazing work, but how can we help each other do it better?
Yeah. And I didn't catch, did you grow up in Oklahoma or were you a transplant to Oklahoma?
Oh, transplant. I grew up out in Los Angeles and I moved here in 2001.
You're so far away from home.
Well, this is home now.
So you're one of the Californians taking up our houses, right? Wink, wink.
Well, I mean, that's one of the benefits of looking at, a different change in your life is that even though it's new and you're meeting different people and there's different cultural considerations when we move into new areas, there's also ripe opportunities for things you may not have ever thought of.
I agree.
I would never bought a house in LA, right? the housing
You
market
could take
there
that
is
money
unreal.
and build 3 mansions here in Oklahoma.
Yes,
and, have
yes.
a underground parking garage. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I mean, Oklahoma is a beautiful state. There's so much to do here. The geography is amazing.
Yeah.
Different road trip every weekend. And the people that I've met the most amazing people of my whole life
Agree.
here.
Agree.
And so there's just such good, solid the earth people that would give you the shirt off their back.
Off their back, yeah.
And I really have just the best intentions here. And I love getting to work every day with them.
I agree. It took me, I used to live in Austin, but before then I grew up in Nigeria. It took me a while to fall in love with Oklahoma. But I still think that they need to do a better PR. People don't really know about Oklahoma. Like,
Right.
I don't know. There's so much to do here, and there's that peace of mind and quality of life, and you can post that pursuit of happiness, which is very fundamental to your right as an American, right?
Right.
People don't really know about Oklahoma. Just think of it like, oh, flyover state. But you'll be missing out a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We need a better PR for the state.
Yeah, let's work on it.
Yeah,
we'll
if anyone
write
is
a
listening,
pamphlet.
hire me.
Yes.
I can
We'll
be
do the
your
Mel and
immigrant
Margaret show.
spokesperson.
Yeah.
Yes. I can be your poster girl for why you should come. It's more than an okay state. That's gonna be my slogan, by the way.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
love
finally, because I gotta let you go. Almost.
Okay.
It's been such fun, chatting with you so far, by the way. Thank you. So, on a lighter note, outside of your professional life, what are some of your hobbies or interests that you enjoy?
Oh, so my hobby is actually road tripping. Whenever we have a weekend, we like to road trip. Yes,
What?
because there's so much to do in Oklahoma.
Tell me some of the things you do.
Oh my gosh. So, the Wildlife Refuge is an easy one down in southwestern Oklahoma. We like to go out to Gloss Mountain out west of Enid. And it's called Gloss because the minerals there look like glass and they shine in the distance. And it's where the old seabed used to be. So you can climb to the top. You can hike up there and see the old seabed. If you go north, there's the Salt Plains, which is the only place in the world where the hourglass selenite crystal grows.
Wow.
And from April to, I think, September, you can dig those up for free. How cool is that? We have the world's tallest hill in Oklahoma.
What?
Yes.
Okay, we need to partner up with that collaboration to talk about Oklahoma. I think you'll be a good partner for that.
There's so much to do. And so that's what my daughter, I have a 14-year-old daughter, and so she's my road trip buddy. And so we'd like to go say, well, where haven't we been lately? And we'll go a direction and find a place to go explore.
Do you have a blog, by the way? Because that would be a good treasure trove to see what adventures you're up to. And
right.
Yeah.
I usually post on Facebook. I do my travel blog on Facebook with the pictures and the stories and all that.
What's your favorite spot so far from your adventures?
My go-to would probably have to be the Talamina Drive down in southeastern Oklahoma when the fall foliage turns.
Oh, the one with the colorful ones?
Yes.
I've seen that on the backdrop. It looked so beautiful. With the pink and really.
Yes.
Wow. It looks like a Pacific highway,
Right? Yeah. It is just one of the coolest things to do.
What? I didn't know. Okay, when I saw the picture on Instagram, someone was like, this cannot be Oklahoma. And the person who posted it was like, no, it's Oklahoma. I have driven there many times. Because again, we need a better PR.
Right? Right? They need us. Yeah.
I know. So hire us, okay? We're your girls.
Yes.
Maggie, thank you so much. Really. Thank you for infusing us with so many doses of inspiration. For that reminder that we never know just what that act of kindness can go a long way. From, your teacher from school, paying for your college, and all of the people who have paved the way to where you are today, and the impact you're making in our community, serving the medically underserved population in Oklahoma, and even the students that come here and maybe train outside of the state. Those impacts, I'm sure they're not being captured, but you're doing a lot. I just want to say thank you for all you do, and we're so happy to have you here in Oklahoma. And thanks for coming on the podcast as well.
Of course. Thank you for this opportunity.
I'll let you know when the episode comes out. Please send it out to everyone. And if there are people in your line of work or even outside of your work that you think would be a great fit for the podcast, please send them our way. We want to keep, amplifying voices of people doing, great work like you in Oklahoma. So please we're looking forward to having more
I
voices.
can give you a list. Yeah.
Please do. If you don't mind emailing it to me, I would. Yeah. We just, I know people are not very, comfortable talking, but we just want to get as many voices as possible.
Oh, there's so many people doing amazing work here.
I know. Please send me a list. I will do the honorable thing and reach out to them, I promise.
Yes, I can definitely do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. I appreciate this.
Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend.
Okay, you too.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Mm-hmm. All right, everyone, that was the GROklahoma podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Reach out to us at GROklahoma podcast at OUHSC.edu if you'd like to be featured. As always, I remain your host, Dr. Mo. Bye for now.